the Zodiac Killer's crimes did not exist in isolation. Beyond the confirmed murders and his taunting communications, the Zodiac inspired both fear and imitation. In the years following his spree, other criminals attempted to mimic his style, sending letters to newspapers or claiming his identity. At the same time, the Zodiac's aura extended far beyond crime scenes and investigations, embedding itself deeply into American popular culture. His symbol, his name, and his persona became part of a cultural vocabulary of fear, shaping films, literature, and the collective imagination. The notoriety of the Zodiac case made it fertile ground for hoaxes and imitators. Some individuals, whether mentally unstable or seeking attention, claimed to be the Zodiac or sent letters styled after his own. For law enforcement, this created significant challenges. Each new communication had to be evaluated for authenticity, forcing investigators to spend precious resources on potential hoaxes while the real killer remained at large. Some crimes that occurred during the Zodiac's peak years were initially suspected to be his work, though many were later ruled out. Among these, the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, 1972-1973, a series of abductions and murders of young women in Northern California, drew speculation of a Zodiac connection. While the brutality and geographic overlap invited comparisons, investigators ultimately found no clear link. The Domingos Edwards murders, 1963. Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, a young couple shot and killed on a beach near Santa Barbara, were murdered in a manner that resembled Zodiac's early attacks. Some theorists suggest this could have been a precursor crime, but evidence is inconclusive. The Riverside Case, Sherry Jo Bates, 1966. As noted earlier, Bates's murder is sometimes attributed to the Zodiac, in part because of the letters that followed. However, the official stance on whether the case is genuinely Zodiac-related remains divided. Even decades later, occasional letters signed with the Zodiac symbol surfaced. Most were dismissed as hoaxes, but each reignited public interest. The flood of forgeries and copycat claims blurred the line between authentic Zodiac communications and attention-seeking imitations, complicating the case and contributing to its mythic status. The Zodiac's self-branding, complete with a chosen name, symbol, and cryptic communication, transcended ordinary criminal behavior. He became a cultural archetype, the faceless predator who thrives on mystery. Unlike most killers, whose infamy depends on capture and trial, the Zodiac's power came from remaining unknown. This anonymity allowed the public imagination to expand his persona into something larger than life, almost mythological. The crosshair symbol he adopted became instantly recognizable, serving both as a personal logo and a psychological weapon. To this day, it remains one of the most iconic emblems in true crime history. His use of letters and ciphers ensured that his crimes were not merely physical acts, but cultural events, discussed around dinner tables and debated in classrooms. The Zodiac Killer's story has inspired countless books, both non-fiction and fictionalized. Robert Graysmith's works, Zodiac, 1986, and Zodiac Unmasked, 2002, were particularly influential, framing Arthur Lee Allen as the prime suspect and popularizing the case for new generations. These books became the basis for director David Fincher's acclaimed 2007 film Zodiac, which dramatized the investigation and captured the atmosphere of fear and obsession that defined the era. Beyond direct retellings, the Zodiac has influenced broader crime and thriller genres. Characters inspired by him appear in films, television series, and novels, often embodying the archetype of the brilliant but elusive killer who taunts authorities. His presence can be felt in everything from gritty detective dramas to psychological thrillers, where his blend of violence, intellect, and spectacle provides a template for fictional villains. The Zodiac was part of a cultural shift in how society viewed criminals. In the mid-20th century, mass media began to elevate certain killers into figures of grim notoriety. Charles Manson and his family dominated headlines in 1969, while later killers like Ted Bundy and the son of Sam would achieve similar media-driven fame. Yet the Zodiac's case was unique in that his identity remained hidden. This anonymity paradoxically amplified his notoriety. Without a face or name, he became a canvas for fear, a symbol of the idea that danger could lurk anywhere, in anyone. In this sense, the Zodiac helped inaugurate the era of the celebrity killer, where media coverage could transform criminals into infamous cultural figures. The Zodiac not only influenced popular culture, but also reshaped the public's sense of safety. His threats against school buses, even if never carried out, tapped into primal fears of children being targeted. Couples who once saw secluded lovers' lanes as safe havens suddenly viewed them as hunting grounds. San Franciscans realized that even the heart of the city could be a site of execution. His crimes highlighted a broader cultural unease of the late 1960s, the sense that violence was random, that institutions were powerless, and that evil could be both banal and theatrical. This psychological impact extended beyond California, with national media ensuring that Americans across the country knew his name and feared his potential reach. In later decades, the Zodiac found renewed life online. The rise of message boards, websites, and forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries brought together amateur sleuths from around the world. Entire communities formed to analyze his ciphers, debate suspects, and pore over old evidence. The case became one of the first true crime phenomena to thrive in the digital age, with armchair detectives collaborating across continents. This online obsession has both preserved and distorted the Zodiac's legacy. On one hand, internet communities have kept his case alive, generating fresh leads and even contributing to breakthroughs like the 2020 solution of the 340 cipher. On the other, the flood of theories and suspect identifications has sometimes spread misinformation, further complicating the pursuit of truth. The Zodiac's cultural impact cannot be overstated. He was not merely a serial killer. He was a creator of myth, an architect of fear whose influence extends far beyond his body count. His persona continues to inspire art, film, literature, and academic studies of criminal psychology and media. By blending violence with communication, anonymity with self-branding, he set the stage for how future killers would interact with society and how society would remember them. The Zodiac became more than a man. He became a symbol, an enduring ghost haunting not only California but American culture itself. Few criminal cases in American history have inspired as much speculation as the Zodiac Killer. Because his identity was never confirmed, and his letters were deliberately cryptic, the case has remained fertile ground for theories ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. Law enforcement investigated hundreds of suspects, but outside of official channels, countless amateur sleuths, journalists, and online communities have offered their own interpretations. This speculation has sustained public interest for more than half a century, making the Zodiac not only an unsolved case but also an enduring cultural puzzle. From the moment the Zodiac began sending letters, members of the public attempted to decipher his codes and uncover his identity. The first cipher, cracked by schoolteacher Donald Hardin and his wife Betty in 1969, demonstrated that amateurs could contribute meaningfully to the case. This success encouraged ordinary people to believe that they, too, might solve the mystery. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Amateur detectives combed through police reports, newspaper archives, and letters, developing theories about suspects and motives. Some focused on handwriting similarities, others on geographic profiling, and still others on esoteric interpretations of his ciphers. The case attracted not only true crime enthusiasts, but also puzzle solvers and cryptography hobbyists who treated the Zodiac's codes as intellectual challenges. Several dominant theories have persisted over the decades, often revolving around a handful of key suspects. Balboans. Arthur Lee Allen. Many continue to believe Allen was the Zodiac, largely due to circumstantial evidence compiled in Robert Graysmith's books Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked. For those who favor Allen, the circumstantial connections, his proximity to crime scenes, disturbing behavior, and cryptic statements outweigh the lack of conclusive forensic evidence. The multiple Zodiac theory. Some argue that the Zodiac persona may have been adopted by more than one individual, explaining inconsistencies in handwriting, descriptions, and methods. In this theory, the Zodiac is less a single killer and more a shared identity, a terrifying possibility that transforms him into a movement rather than a man. The military or police suspect. Another theory suggests the Zodiac had military or law enforcement training. The precision of his firearms use, his familiarity with codes, and his ability to evade detection have led some to argue that he was a disciplined, trained individual rather than a random loner. The Riverside Connection. Advocates of this theory maintain that the 1966 murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside was Zodiac's first crime, pointing to the taunting confession letter and later Zodiac hints. If true, this would expand his timeline and geographic reach. One of the most influential figures in shaping Zodiac theories is Robert Graysmith, a political cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle. Graysmith became obsessed with the case while working at the newspaper during the height of the Zodiac's activity. His books, particularly Zodiac, 1986, presented Arthur Lee Allen as the likely killer. Though criticized for speculation and inaccuracies, Graysmith's work brought renewed attention to the case, inspiring both public fascination and cinematic adaptations. His framing of Allen as the Zodiac remains one of the most widely accepted theories in the popular imagination. Even if law enforcement never officially endorsed it, the rise of the internet transformed Zodiac speculation into a global phenomenon. Websites and forums dedicated to the case, such as Zodiac Killer, calm and Reddit communities allowed amateur sleuths to collaborate, debate, and share findings across borders. Enthusiasts scanned and uploaded Zodiac's letters, police reports, and crime scene photos, making the case more accessible than ever. Some online efforts produced genuine breakthroughs, such as the 2020 solution of the 340-character cipher by a team of code breakers who coordinated across continents using digital tools. This demonstrated the potential for collaborative problem-solving in the Internet era, validating the role of amateurs in advancing aspects of the case. However, the Internet has also magnified misinformation. Numerous individuals have been falsely accused by online sleuths, sometimes with damaging consequences for families. The proliferation of theories has created a noisy landscape, where credible research competes with wild speculation. Beyond mainstream suspects, more fringe theories abound. Some claim the Zodiac was part of a larger conspiracy, connected to satanic cults or secret societies. Others argue he was a member of law enforcement deliberately sabotaging the investigation. There are even theories linking the Zodiac to other infamous cases, such as the disappearance of Donna Lass or the Santa Rosa murders, with little evidence beyond speculation. Conspiracy theories thrive in the Zodiac case because of the vacuum left by the absence of answers. With no definitive resolution, every inconsistency becomes an opening for interpretation. For some, the lack of closure is itself proof of a cover-up. Why does the Zodiac case inspire so much theorizing? Part of the answer lies in the killer's deliberate construction of mystery. By sending ciphers and taunts, he invited speculation, ensuring that his crimes were not just acts of violence, but puzzles demanding engagement. Another factor is the human tendency to seek closure. The unresolved nature of the case compels people to create narratives that make sense of the chaos. Moreover, the Zodiac embodies the archetype of the faceless predator. Because his identity is unknown, he can be projected onto countless suspects, each reflecting the fears or suspicions of the era. In this sense, speculation about the Zodiac says as much about society as it does about the killer. After more than 50 years, theories about the Zodiac remain as vibrant as ever. Whether focusing on Arthur Lee Allen, Gary Post, or other suspects, the debates continue in books, documentaries, forums, and coffee shops. Each new claim rekindles hope for resolution, while each failure deepens the sense that the Zodiac may forever remain unidentified. The speculation itself has become part of the Zodiac's legacy. Even if his identity were revealed tomorrow, the decades of debate, obsession, and theorizing would remain a testament to the power of mystery in shaping culture. The Zodiac did not merely kill. He constructed a riddle that continues to echo across generations. The Zodiac case, like many other infamous unsolved mysteries, has been given new life in the 21st century through the rapid advancement of forensic science. Techniques that were unavailable to investigators in the 1960s, DNA profiling, digital databases, and forensic genealogy, have opened possibilities that once seemed unimaginable. While these methods have not yet conclusively identified the Zodiac, they have provided fresh leads, debunked long-standing suspects, and demonstrated that the case is not frozen in time, but continues to evolve. By the 1990s, DNA testing was beginning to transform criminal investigations. Detectives working cold cases turned to biological samples preserved in evidence lockers, hoping to extract usable genetic material. In the Zodiac case, attention focused on the killer's letters, which bore saliva from stamps and envelopes. San Francisco Police Department attempted DNA extraction in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Partial profiles were obtained, but contamination and degradation posed significant challenges. Some letters may have been handled by journalists, police, or even hoaxers, complicating efforts to confirm whether DNA samples truly belong to the Zodiac. In 2002, investigators announced that DNA from one of the letters did not match Arthur Lee Allen, long considered the prime suspect. For many, this seemed to exonerate him, though skeptics argued that the tested letters might not have contained the killer's DNA at all. The result highlighted both the promise and limitations of early DNA testing. It could rule out suspects, but only if the evidence was uncontaminated and conclusively linked to the perpetrator. The most revolutionary moment in modern criminal forensics came in 2018, when Joseph James DeAngelo, the so-called Golden State Killer, was identified through forensic genealogy. Investigators uploaded crime scene DNA to open-source genealogy databases and traced distant relatives, eventually building a family tree that pointed to DeAngelo. His arrest demonstrated the immense potential of combining DNA analysis with genealogical research. For Zodiac investigators, this case reignited hope. If DeAngelo could be unmasked after decades, why not the Zodiac? Enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and professional investigators alike began to push for renewed testing of Zodiac evidence, particularly saliva from letters and fingerprints recovered from Paul Stine's cab. In the wake of the Golden State Killer breakthrough, reports surfaced that Zodiac evidence was once again being tested. San Francisco police confirmed in 2018 that they were conducting advanced DNA analysis on envelopes and stamps. However, as with earlier attempts, the challenge lay in determining whether the material came from the killer or from others who handled the evidence. In 2021, the Casebreakers group claimed to have tied a man named Gary Francis Post to the Zodiac through DNA, photographs, and testimony from acquaintances. They suggested that paint flecks found on suspected Zodiac evidence matched Post's possession of similar materials. However, law enforcement agencies have not publicly verified these claims, and the FBI reiterated that the Zodiac case remains open and unsolved. The Post theory demonstrates the difficulties of relying on partial or indirect DNA evidence. Without a complete genetic profile that can be matched conclusively to crime scene evidence, theories remain speculative. Modern investigations have also benefited from digital tools that allow for new types of analysis. High-resolution scans of Zodiac letters have enabled forensic linguists and handwriting experts to study them with greater precision. Advanced software can compare writing samples across vast databases, while artificial intelligence tools can detect patterns invisible to the human eye. Additionally, digital reconstructions of crime scenes, particularly the Lake Berryessa attack and Paul Stine's murder, have allowed investigators to test theories about the killer's movements, timing, and escape routes. These reconstructions, while not definitive, provide fresh insights into crimes that occurred more than 50 years ago. In 2020, the breakthrough solution of the Zodiac's 340-character cipher demonstrated how modern technology could achieve what decades of human effort could not. Using computer algorithms, international collaboration, and trial-and-error methods, the codebreakers revealed a message that mocked law enforcement, but provided no identity. While the solution did not bring investigators closer to the killer, it did prove that persistence and innovation could still unlock aspects of the case once thought impenetrable. It also renewed interest in the remaining unsolved ciphers, with amateur and professional cryptographers alike hoping that continued advances might yield further answers. One of the most remarkable aspects of modern Zodiac investigation is the role of civilians. Just as the Hardens cracked the first cipher in 1969, today's breakthroughs often come from passionate amateurs armed with digital tools. Genealogy enthusiasts, in particular, have played a crucial role in cold case resolutions by uploading their DNA to public databases, indirectly assisting law enforcement in identifying suspects. In the Zodiac case, online communities continue to share theories about how forensic genealogy could be applied. Some argue that all known DNA samples from Zodiac evidence should be uploaded to genealogy databases in hopes of a match. Others worry about privacy concerns, pointing out the ethical dilemmas of using consumer DNA for criminal investigations. As of today, the Zodiac case remains officially unsolved, but law enforcement has not abandoned it. The FBI, California Department of Justice, and San Francisco Police all maintain open files. Advances in DNA technology continue to offer hope, though challenges of contamination, degraded samples, and questions of authenticity persist. The possibility remains that a definitive breakthrough could occur, either through a conclusive DNA match or a genealogical connection. Yet even if science one day reveals the Zodiac's identity, the cultural weight of the case ensures that speculation, myth, and fascination will continue. Modern forensic science has revolutionized criminal investigations, but the Zodiac case highlights its limitations. DNA evidence is only as strong as the samples it comes from. If the Zodiac used damp sponges or gloves to avoid leaving saliva or prints, the material left behind may never be usable. Likewise, genealogy requires a sufficiently complete genetic profile and a large enough database of relatives to establish connections. Still, the case remains alive in part because of these possibilities. Each advance in technology brings renewed hope that the mystery could finally be solved. For now, the Zodiac remains a ghost in the machine, elusive, taunting, but perhaps not untouchable forever. The Zodiac Killer's legacy extends far beyond the crime scenes of Northern California. More than perhaps any other American serial killer of the 20th century, he has become a cultural figure, a symbol, a character, a myth. His influence can be traced through decades of books, movies, music, television, and even video games. Unlike most criminals, whose infamy fades after capture or death, the Zodiac's anonymity has allowed him to endure as a cultural icon. He is simultaneously a puzzle, a bogeyman, and a canvas onto which society projects its fears. From the beginning, the Zodiac's story was carried in print. Newspaper articles were the first stage for his theater, but books cemented his place in popular culture. Robert Graysmith's Zodiac, 1986. Perhaps the most influential book on the case, Graysmith's work introduced millions of readers to the Zodiac story. As a cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle, Graysmith had a front-row seat to the killer's letters and became obsessed with solving the mystery. His book painted Arthur Lee Allen as the likely culprit, shaping public perception for decades. Zodiac Unmasked, 2002. In this sequel, Graysmith doubled down on the Allen theory. While his conclusions have been criticized for speculation and errors, his books kept the Zodiac alive in the cultural imagination and provided the foundation for later adaptations. Other works beyond Graysmith, numerous journalists, detectives, and true crime authors have written about the Zodiac. Each book adds new interpretations, suspects, or theories, ensuring the case never truly fades. Titles like This is the Zodiac Speaking and Most Evil, which controversially links Zodiac to the Black Dahlia case, illustrate how diverse and speculative the literature has become. Books did more than recount facts. They mythologized the Zodiac. They invited readers to participate in the puzzle, to speculate, to imagine, and to fear. The Zodiac's influence in cinema is profound. Da Producculto. David Fincher's Zodiac, 2007. Widely regarded as one of the most accurate and compelling dramatizations of the case, Fincher's film is based on Graysmith's books, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. Soul. The movie blends investigative drama with psychological thriller. It captures both the terror of the Zodiac's crimes and the obsession of those who tried to solve them. The film's meticulous attention to detail and refusal to provide closure mirrors the case itself, leaving viewers unsettled but fascinated. Earlier exploitation films. In the 1970s, films loosely based on the Zodiac appeared quickly, capitalizing on public fear. Titles like The Zodiac Killer, 1971, dramatized events with sensational flair, often bending facts to heighten the horror. These films reveal how quickly true crime can be commercialized. Influence on other movies. The Zodiac has inspired countless fictionalized killers. The taunting phone calls in Dirty Harry, 1971, are modeled on Zodiac, with the villain named Scorpio, directly referencing him. Later films from Seven, 1995, to The Batman, 2022, drew upon the Zodiac's combination of cryptic messages, symbolic imagery, and theatricality. The Zodiac has appeared across television series, documentaries, and even music. True crime shows like America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, and modern streaming documentaries revisit his case regularly, each adding to his legend. In music, bands and artists have referenced the Zodiac's name or imagery, sometimes as a metaphor for chaos or darkness. His crosshair symbol has appeared on album covers, graffiti, and underground artwork, further embedding him in popular iconography. Even video games have drawn inspiration from the Zodiac archetype. Villains who leave cryptic notes, codes, and symbols are direct descendants of his theatrical methods. The Zodiac is more than a historical figure. He is an archetype of the enigmatic killer. His anonymity allows storytellers to use him as a template, a villain who is terrifying not just because of violence, but because of mystery. He represents the fear of the unknown, the idea that evil could be faceless, omnipresent, and impossible to capture. This archetype has had lasting power. Modern fictional killers, from The Silence of the Lambs to Mindhunter, owe something to the Zodiac. His blend of intellect, taunting communication, and theatrical presentation set the stage for the modern depiction of serial killers in media. Why does the Zodiac endure when so many other killers have faded into obscurity? The answer lies in his unresolved identity. Unlike Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, whose arrests and confessions close the book on their cases, the Zodiac remains open-ended. His story has no final chapter, which allows culture to keep writing new ones. The mythos thrives on ambiguity. Was he Arthur Lee Allen, Gary Post, or someone else entirely? Were his ciphers meaningful or nonsense? Did he stop killing, or did he continue under another identity? These unanswered questions keep the Zodiac alive, not just in police files, but in the imagination of artists, writers, and audiences. In this way, the Zodiac has transcended true crime to become part of folklore. He is as much a cultural symbol as Jack the Ripper, an eternal figure whose mystery is his power. More than 50 years have passed since the Zodiac Killer's confirmed attacks, yet the case remains open and unsolved. For some, this continued mystery is a source of frustration, a testament to investigative failures and missed opportunities. For others, it is precisely the absence of resolution that has allowed the Zodiac to loom so large in the American imagination. The case today exists at the intersection of law enforcement persistence, cultural obsession, and technological hope. Several key factors explain why the Zodiac case has resisted closure, despite decades of investigation, one fragmented jurisdictions. The Zodiac's crimes spanned multiple counties and cities: Vallejo, Benicia, Napa, and San Francisco. Each law enforcement agency kept its own records, pursued its own leads, and guarded its own jurisdiction. In the pre-digital era, information sharing was cumbersome and often incomplete. The result was a fractured investigation in which critical connections may have been lost. 2. Lack of forensic evidence. The Zodiac was careful. He left behind few physical clues, and those that did exist, fingerprints, hair, and saliva, were either partial, contaminated, or inconclusive. Unlike the Golden State Killer, who was undone by preserved DNA, the Zodiac may never have left usable samples behind. This leaves investigators largely reliant on circumstantial evidence and witness accounts. 3. Hoaxes and noise. The case attracted an extraordinary number of hoax letters and tips. Every new communication had to be analyzed, draining police resources and creating an overwhelming amount of noise that obscured genuine leads. The Zodiac himself encouraged this by planting false trails, reveling in confusion. 4. Shifting investigative priorities. As years passed without resolution, investigators were reassigned, and departments turned their focus to newer crimes. The Zodiac case became a cold case, revisited periodically but never with the urgency of its early years. This gradual fading of institutional focus hindered progress, rather than the killer's disappearance. After 1974, Zodiac's confirmed communications ceased. Whether he died, moved, or simply stopped, his absence from the public stage removed the momentum from the investigation. Unlike other serial killers, who continued offending until capture, the Zodiac vanished, leaving investigators chasing a ghost. The San Francisco Police Department, FBI, and California Department of Justice still list the Zodiac investigation as open. Cold case units occasionally revisit evidence, particularly in light of advances in DNA testing. In 2018, San Francisco police announced renewed efforts to extract DNA from Zodiac letters using cutting-edge technology, though no public breakthrough has been announced. Law enforcement agencies remain cautious, while amateur sleuths often promote new suspects, such as Gary Post, identified by the Casebreakers Group in 2021. Authorities have not officially confirmed any of these claims. Their silence reflects the evidentiary standards required in criminal law. Speculation may fuel books and headlines, but conviction requires hard proof. For the public, however, certainty is not required. The Zodiac case thrives on speculation precisely because it is unresolved. Online communities debate suspects endlessly. Podcasts dissect each letter, and documentaries revisit the murders with each new generation. This endless churn keeps the case alive, ensuring it is never relegated to the past. The internet has made the Zodiac more accessible than ever. Scans of his letters, maps of crime scenes, and detailed police reports circulate widely, allowing anyone with curiosity to immerse themselves in the case. This democratization of information has blurred the line between professional investigator and amateur sleuth, making the Zodiac a global puzzle rather than a local tragedy. Why does the Zodiac continue to fascinate after half a century? Several reasons stand out. The unsolved identity. The biggest factor is the simplest. He was never caught. Humans crave closure, and the absence of it keeps the story alive. Every new theory offers the hope of resolution. The performance of mystery. The Zodiac did not simply kill. He staged his crimes as puzzles, inviting attention and analysis. His ciphers, threats, and symbol made him larger than life, turning his story into an interactive mystery that endures. Cultural archetypes. The Zodiac represents the faceless predator, the idea that anyone could be hiding behind a mask of normalcy. He embodies the fear of the unknown in an age when people were realizing how vulnerable they were. The media legacy. From Robert Graysmith's books to David Fincher's film Zodiac, the case has been continually repackaged for new audiences. Each retelling introduces the story to another generation, ensuring its persistence. While many believe the Zodiac will remain forever unsolved, advances in forensic science continue to offer hope. DNA genealogy has cracked cases once thought impossible. If usable DNA exists, the Zodiac could one day be unmasked, bringing closure to families and ending decades of speculation. Until then, the case remains suspended between history and mystery, a haunting reminder of both investigative limits and human obsession with the unknowable. The Zodiac case today is not merely a cold case. It is a living story, constantly renewed by technology, media, and public imagination. Whether it will ever be resolved remains uncertain, but its endurance demonstrates the power of mystery to captivate, terrify, and fascinate across generations. The Zodiac Killer investigation is not only a story of unsolved murders, but also a profound case study in the limitations of criminal justice during the mid-20th century. While the Zodiac himself cultivated an aura of genius and elusiveness, much of his success in evading capture can be attributed to systemic issues within law enforcement at the time. From fragmented jurisdictions to outdated forensic methods, the Zodiac case exposes the structural vulnerabilities that criminals could exploit, and it offers important lessons for how criminal justice must evolve to prevent such failures in the future. One of the most significant obstacles in the Zodiac investigation was the patchwork of jurisdictions. His confirmed attacks spanned Vallejo, Solano County, Benicia, Napa County, and San Francisco. Each had its own police department or sheriff's office, each with different priorities, procedures, and record-keeping systems. In an era without digital communication, coordinating across agencies meant phone calls, mailed reports, or in-person meetings. Information was slow to travel, and interdepartmental rivalries sometimes prevented full cooperation. The Zodiac took advantage of this fractured landscape, moving between counties and leaving investigators struggling to connect the dots in real time. This challenge illustrated a larger problem in American policing of the 1960s. Local control often trumped coordination, leaving gaps for criminals who crossed borders. The Zodiac case underscored the need for centralized databases, interagency collaboration, and national standards for information sharing, developments that would come later with systems like the FBI's VICAP, Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. Today, forensic science plays a central role in criminal investigations. DNA profiling, computerized fingerprint matching, and advanced ballistics databases allow investigators to connect suspects to crimes with precision. In the late 1960s, however, forensic tools were limited. Fingerprints. The Zodiac left behind latent prints, most notably on Paul Stine's cab. However, fingerprint databases at the time were local, not national, and comparisons were done manually by experts. Without a suspect to compare them to, the prints were essentially useless. Handwriting analysis. Much weight was given to handwriting comparisons between Zodiac's letters and suspects, yet handwriting analysis is inherently subjective. Experts often disagreed, and courts were hesitant to treat it as definitive proof. Ballistics. Forensic analysis confirmed that the same gun type was used in multiple attacks, but investigators never recovered the weapon itself. Without it, the link remained circumstantial. Duthity DNA. Completely unavailable in the 1960s, DNA would not become a forensic tool until the 1980s. By then, much of the Zodiac evidence had degraded or been handled by too many people to guarantee clean samples. The Zodiac case highlighted how dependent investigators were on eyewitnesses, confessions, or a suspect's mistake. Without modern science, the Zodiac could operate with relative impunity. The Zodiac's mastery of media manipulation posed unique challenges for law enforcement. Every letter he sent, every threat he made, generated headlines that fueled public fear. Police departments faced enormous pressure to respond quickly, often with limited information. Mistakes, like the dispatcher's misidentification of Paul Stine's killer as a black male, leading to officers releasing a white man who may have been the Zodiac, were magnified under the media spotlight. The media frenzy also created an environment in which hoaxers thrived. Police were inundated with false letters, phony tips, and exaggerated claims. Sifting through this deluge consumed resources and often distracted from genuine leads. The case illustrated how media attention, while helpful in raising awareness, can also distort investigations and overwhelm law enforcement. Another unique challenge of the Zodiac case was the psychological dimension. Most killers avoid attention. The Zodiac demanded it. His taunts undermined public confidence in the police, mocking their inability to catch him. This psychological warfare demoralized investigators and created a sense of the killer as omnipotent, even when he was simply an ordinary man exploiting investigative weaknesses. For police officers already working under pressure, Zodiac's letters, boasting of crimes, threatening school buses, or ridiculing detectives, were not only investigative puzzles, but also morale-shattering weapons. Criminal justice systems were unprepared for a criminal who fought not just with bullets, but with words. The Zodiac investigation generated hundreds of suspects, each requiring interviews, background checks, and in some cases, surveillance. Without computerized systems, case files were maintained in paper form, making cross-referencing slow and labor-intensive. Valuable time was lost, chasing dead ends, and promising leads often grew cold before they could be pursued fully. The sheer number of suspects also revealed how thinly stretched detectives were. In some cases, promising suspects like Arthur Lee Allen were pursued intermittently, with years passing between major efforts to tie him to the crimes. The burden of managing such a massive suspect pool highlighted the need for more resources, better case management tools, and a standardized approach to complex investigations. The Zodiac case offers enduring lessons about the challenges of law enforcement. 1. Centralized databases are essential. The case illustrates why national systems for fingerprints, DNA, and ballistics were desperately needed. Today, integrated databases allow investigators to link crimes across jurisdictions far more effectively. 2. Forensics must be preserved properly. The degradation and mishandling of Zodiac evidence reveal the importance of preserving crime scene material with future technologies in mind. Modern standards for evidence handling emerged in part from cases like this. 3. Interagency collaboration is critical. Rivalries between police departments hampered the Zodiac investigation. Modern criminal justice emphasizes task forces, shared intelligence, and cooperation. Lessons learned from such failures. 4. Media must be managed strategically. The Zodiac showed how criminals could manipulate public panic through the press. Today, police departments employ communication specialists and strategies for handling high-profile cases, balancing transparency with investigative integrity. 5. Psychological profiling matters. The Zodiac's behavior demonstrated the need for criminal profiling. In later decades, the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit developed systematic approaches to understanding offenders, in part influenced by unsolved cases like Zodiac. The Zodiac case was not merely an investigative failure. It was a mirror of the limitations of 1960s criminal justice. It exposed vulnerabilities in forensic science, interagency cooperation, and media management. At the same time, it helped spur changes that strengthened law enforcement in the decades that followed. In this way, the Zodiac left a paradoxical legacy. While he remains uncaught, the lessons of his case reshaped how America investigates crime. His crimes were tragedies, but his elusiveness forced law enforcement to evolve. The Zodiac Killer occupies a unique and unsettling place in American history. More than half a century after his first confirmed murders, his crimes remain unresolved, his identity concealed, his motives ambiguous. Unlike other serial killers who have been arrested, tried, and cataloged, the Zodiac exists in a liminal space between fact and myth. He is both a historical criminal and a cultural phantom, haunting America with the enduring question, who was he? In the annals of crime, the Zodiac stands apart from his contemporaries. Figures like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy eventually had their trials, confessions, or executions, providing a sense of closure. The Zodiac never did. His refusal to be caught and the system's inability to catch him allowed him to transcend the status of a mere killer and become an archetype of the unknown predator. Jack the Ripper, who terrorized London in the 1880s, is perhaps the only other killer whose anonymity has generated a comparable legacy. Both Ripper and Zodiac remind us that the absence of answers can be more haunting than the presence of guilt. Their cases became cultural legends precisely because they were never solved, ensuring endless speculation and myth-making. The Zodiac left behind two parallel legacies. One, a legacy of fear for the victims, their families, and the communities of Northern California. The Zodiac was not a myth, but a real figure of terror. He robbed young people of their futures, left families in mourning, and terrorized an entire region with threats of violence. His crimes disrupted the rhythms of ordinary life. School buses were monitored, couples avoided lovers' lanes, and citizens carried with them a heightened sense of vulnerability. The true cost of his actions is measured not in his mythos, but in the pain of those who suffered directly. 2. A legacy of fascination. For the broader culture, the Zodiac became an enduring puzzle. His cryptograms, letters, and theatrics transformed his crimes into an interactive mystery. Each unsolved cipher, each disputed suspect, each ambiguous clue feeds an ongoing fascination. He became a symbol of the unknowable, a figure who forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the fragility of justice, and the darkness that lurks behind anonymity. The Zodiac also reflected the anxieties of his era. The late 1960s were marked by assassinations, war, cultural upheaval, and generational conflict. In this context, the Zodiac symbolized the chaos of the time. Violence without clear motive, authority powerless to protect, and institutions struggling to respond to new forms of criminality. He was both a product of and a contributor to the disillusionment of the age. Though unresolved, the Zodiac case has shaped law enforcement practices. It underscored the need for interagency cooperation, the preservation of forensic evidence, and the strategic management of media in high-profile crimes. It revealed the destructive power of hoaxes, the psychological warfare of criminal taunts, and the public's insatiable appetite for both fear and closure. In this sense, the Zodiac forced the criminal justice system to evolve, even if he himself was never caught. His elusiveness was a catalyst for change. Perhaps the most unsettling truth about the Zodiac is that he may never be identified. He may have died decades ago, his secrets buried with him, or he may have lived an ordinary life, unrecognized by those around him, carrying his crimes in silence. The possibility that such a figure could exist undetected is part of what makes his story so enduring. Yet in another sense, the Zodiac has already achieved immortality. Through his letters, his symbol, and his myth, he remains present. He exists in books, films, academic studies, online debates, and cultural memory. He has become less a man than a mythological figure, a representation of mystery, menace, and the human fascination with the unknown. The Zodiac Killer's true identity may never be revealed, but his story will continue to echo. He was not merely a murderer. He was a manipulator of fear, a creator of myth, and a figure who blurred the line between crime and performance. His crimes remind us of the fragility of order, the limits of justice, and the enduring power of mystery to capture the human imagination. In the end, the Zodiac is remembered not only for the lives he stole, but for the questions he left behind. And perhaps that was his final victory, not evading capture, but ensuring that half a century later, we are still asking who he was, still puzzling over his codes, and still haunted by the shadow he cast across American history.